The smell of garlic butter and seared salmon drifted from the kitchen doors as Jamal Johnson tied his apron in front of the hallway mirror. He took a breath, tightening the knot like it might hold together the rest of his unraveling life. Another night, another shift. Another round of pretending the insults didn't sting. "You good, Jay?" Malik, the dishwasher, passed by, balancing a crate of plates. Jamal forced a quick smile. "Yeah, man, just another Friday night." But it wasn't just another night. Not really. The text from his sister that morning still burned in the back of his mind. "They increased tuition. I don't know if I can stay this semester. Mama says don't tell you. She thinks you're stressed enough." Jamal swallowed hard as he smoothed his apron. Kayla was 18, smart, driven, top of her class, and he'd promised their mother she wouldn't end up stuck like him. He stared at his reflection, the pressed white shirt, the polite smile, the eyes that looked a little more tired every week. This wasn't the life he'd planned. At 16, Jamal was the kid who baked birthday cakes for his friends because their parents couldn't afford them. He was the one who dreamed of opening a small cafe, a place with warm lights, soft jazz, and desserts people couldn't forget. But life had a way of folding dreams like cheap napkins. When his mother's health started to spiral during his senior year, college tours turned into clinic visits. Dialysis, medications, hospital bills. By 18, Jamal was stocking grocery shelves by day and working a late-night diner shift by night. By 19, the Crescent opened downtown, a sleek, upscale bistro with floor-to-ceiling windows and clientele who wore designer suits and spoke in clipped, dismissive tones. Jamal applied on a whim, expecting rejection. To his surprise, he got the job. It wasn't what he wanted, but it was survival. And survival paid the rent. He learned fast. The fake smile, the steady hands, the ability to listen to customers complain about a drink garnish while ignoring the way some of them looked right through him. Or worse, right at him. "Excuse me," I asked for the other waiter. "Are you new here?" "I didn't know they let people like you work here." That last one still echoed even a year later. A middle-aged woman had whispered it just loud enough for him to hear, her pearls catching the chandelier light. He smiled, nodded, kept moving. Because rent didn't care about pride. Neither did medical bills, or Kayla's tuition. "Johnson!" The manager's voice snapped him back to the present. "Yes, chef?" Chef Marcus, the floor manager, pointed toward table 14. "VIP table. Foster and his wife. They're yours tonight. Be sharp." Jamal's stomach dipped. Gerald Foster. He knew the name. Everyone did. Foster was a corporate consultant, loaded, loud, and infamous for making waiters feel like dirt. Jamal had served him twice before. The first time, Foster criticized his unprofessional posture. The second time, Foster had joked about whether Jamal could afford the silverware he was carrying. Tonight would be the third time. "Got it, chef?" Jamal squared his shoulders, pushing down the knot in his chest. As he approached table 14, Foster was already seated, legs crossed, his expensive watch gleaming under the soft lighting. His wife, elegant in a sleek black dress, glanced at Jamal with a polite, distant smile. "Good evening, Mr. Foster, Mrs. Foster." Jamal kept his voice even. "Welcome back to the Crescent. May I start you with sparkling or still water?" Foster looked him over like he was examining a questionable product. "Still, and don't take all night about it." Jamal noted it without comment. "Of course, sir." The night unfolded in the way Jamal expected. Foster snapped his fingers when he wanted attention, complained about a perfectly cooked filet, mocked the wine selection, then ordered the most expensive bottle anyway. And through it all, Jamal smiled, served, kept his cool. Because it wasn't about Foster. It was about his mom resting at home after her latest treatment. It was about Kayla sitting in her dorm wondering if she'd have to pack up and leave. It was about bills, groceries, and holding on until something, anything changed. Halfway through the evening, Malik slipped him a note from the back kitchen. "Carter's here, watching the floor." Jamal blinked. Mr. Carter? The elusive owner of the Crescent rarely made appearances on the floor. He was a legend among the staff, the black businessman who started with a food truck and built an empire. He hardly ever showed up during dinner rush. Jamal stole a glance toward the bar. There he was, tall, composed, eyes scanning the room. Why tonight? Jamal pushed the thought away and refilled Foster's glass. "Is there anything else I can get for you, sir?" He gave a sharp smile. "Yeah, a waiter who knows what he's doing." The table next to them went silent. Jamal's heart thudded in his chest. I apologize if... Of course you apologize. That's what you people are good at, right? Foster chuckled. His wife looked down at her plate. Jamal stood there, napkin in hand, feeling every pair of eyes on him. He could walk away. He could speak up. But would that cost him his job? His paycheck? So he did what he always did. He swallowed the burning lump in his throat and smiled. "I'll fix that for you, sir." But this time, someone else wasn't going to stay silent. The night ended with a hollow kind of silence. Jamal clocked out past midnight, the city streets shimmering with the ghostly glow of street lamps on wet asphalt. His sneakers slapped against the sidewalk as he made his way toward the bus stop, head down, apron folded under one arm. The incident with Foster clung to him like oil on skin. He'd smiled. He'd nodded. He'd taken, like always. But inside something cracked. He wasn't sure when it started. Maybe the first time a customer waved him off like a fly, or maybe when Chef Marcus scolded him for a mistake a coworker made, or when the tips didn't cover groceries and he had to skip a meal to stretch the last few dollars. But tonight, with Foster's venomous words still ringing in his ears, Jamal felt something he hadn't let himself feel in a long time. Anger. Not the kind that started fights. The kind that simmered deep in his gut, a quiet, bitter boil that said, "How much more do I have to take?" He pulled out his phone at the bus stop and opened the text thread with Kayla. "How's Mama tonight?" A few seconds passed. "Resting. Said she didn't want to bother you. You okay, Jay?" His fingers hovered over the screen. He almost typed, "I'm good," but the words felt hollow. Instead, he settled for, "Yeah, long shift. Love you." "Love you too." He pocketed his phone and stared into the night. The weight of his family rested on his shoulders, a load he carried alone since their father left 5 years ago. One morning, the man they'd called Dad kissed their mother on the cheek, said he was running to the store, and never came back. No note, no goodbye. Just gone. Jamal was 21, Kayla 13. The first weeks after, their mom held it together, working double shifts at the nursing home, pretending like everything was fine. But stress chipped away at her health. By the time Jamal realized how bad it was, the doctors were talking about kidney failure. Dialysis 3 times a week, medication every day. A lifetime of treatments they couldn't afford. Jamal dropped out of community college without telling anyone. What was the point of chasing a dream when his family needed him right now? He picked up every job he could. Grocery store stock boy, night shift gas station attendant, delivery driver. anything that paid. The Crescent was a lucky break, if you could call it that. Better pay, nicer uniforms, tips when the customers weren't stingy. But even that came at a price. Jamal learned quickly how to disappear into the role, polite, efficient, agreeable. He kept his head down, spoke only when spoken to, and made himself invisible except when someone needed a refill or a perfect smile. Sometimes I'd hear whispers from the other waitstaff. Why does he let them talk to him like that?
Man, if that were me, I'd get fired in 5 seconds. But those whispers came from people with options. People with parents to fall back on, savings accounts, safety nets. Jamal didn't have a net. If he fell, there was no catching him. The bus routed up to the stop and Jamal climbed aboard, sinking into a cracked vinyl seat. The city blurred past, neon lights, shuttered shops, a homeless man curled under a newspaper. Jamal exhaled slowly. He remembered a night years ago when his mom first got sick. He found her sitting on the edge of her bed, head in her hands, silent tears running down her face. "Mama," he whispered, heart squeezing. She looked up at him, smiled softly, and said, "Don't you worry about me, Jay. You just make something of yourself." That was the last time she said it, because after that, the worry became his. And making something of himself, that could wait.
The bus ride home felt longer than usual. When he finally reached their apartment, a cramped 2-bedroom on the east side, it was nearly 1 a.m. He unlocked the door quietly, stepping inside. The familiar scent of lavender and old fabric greeted him. In the living room, his mother lay asleep on the worn-out couch, a thin blanket pulled over her legs. Her face looked peaceful, but thinner than he remembered. Kayla sat at the kitchen table, her textbook open but untouched. She looked up as Jamal entered, offering a small, tired smile. "You didn't wake her?" he whispered. Kayla shook her head. "She had a rough night, threw up after dinner. I didn't want to bother you at work." Jamal's chest tightened. "She didn't want to bother you." "I wish you'd told me," he said softly, setting down his apron. Kayla shrugged, eyes dropping to the table. "You're already doing enough, Jay." He pulled out a chair and sat beside her. For a moment, neither spoke. The kitchen clock ticked softly on the wall. "Tuition's gonna be fine," Jamal said finally. "We'll figure it out." Kayla met his eyes. "Jay, I can take a semester off. It's not—" "No." His voice came out sharper than he intended. He softened it. "You stay. You keep going. I'll handle it." She stared at him, worry flickering behind her soft brown eyes. "But who's handling you?" Jamal smiled, a small, tired curve of his lips. "I'm good, sis." And for now, that was the truth he'd tell them both, because Jamal knew how to carry weight. He'd been doing it for years. And until something changed, he'd carry it as long as it took. Saturday nights at the Crescent were always busy, but this night hummed with an undercurrent Jamal couldn't explain. The following evening after the napkin incident, Jamal clocked in early hoping to shake off the tension still sitting on his shoulders, but as he walked onto the dining floor, something was different. The air felt thicker, not tense exactly, but alert. Servers moved a little quicker. The bartender, usually half distracted with his playlist, was meticulously polishing glasses. Malik, the dishwasher, wasn't cracking jokes. Even Chef Marcus, the notoriously unbothered floor manager, smoothed his tie before stepping onto the floor.
Jamal caught the chef before anyone even said a word. He slipped past the hostess stand, grabbing menus, when Sherry, one of the senior waitresses, leaned in with a whisper. "Carter's on the floor." Jamal blinked. "What?" Sherry gave a pointed nod toward the bar area. "Walked in an hour ago, just watching." Jamal's stomach flipped. Watching? He stole a glance past the wine racks. There he was, Julian Carter, the man behind it all. Carter leaned casually against the end of the bar, a glass of sparkling water in hand, dressed in a sharp charcoal blazer over a black turtleneck. Not loud, not flashy, but impossible to miss once your eyes landed on him. He wasn't talking. He wasn't smiling. He was simply observing. His dark, focused eyes moved across the room, landing on each server, each table, like he was seeing something nobody else did. Jamal had seen him twice before, both times at staff meetings where Carter spoke for barely 5 minutes. A man of few words, but the kind who made every sentence weigh heavy. He was a walking story of hustle, a college dropout who started selling sandwiches from the back of a van before building the Crescent brand into the hottest dining name in the city. People said Carter didn't just build restaurants. He built standards. He built reputations. And right now, he was watching them. Jamal's hands went clammy. Why tonight? Why now? After what happened with Foster, had someone complained? Did Carter hear about it? Was this it? The night he lost the job he couldn't afford to lose? "Yo," Malik muttered as he passed by with a tray. "Don't trip, bro. He's probably just checking in." Jamal gave a tight nod, but his heart wasn't buying it. He turned his focus back to the tables, forcing himself into the rhythm of service. Water, bread, check-ins, smiles. But he couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on him. He caught glimpses of Carter now and then, standing near the window, blending into shadows, always quiet, always watching. Once, as Jamal delivered a bill to a couple, he met Carter's gaze for a half heartbeat. And in that brief glance, something shifted. Carter didn't look through him the way the customers did, didn't give him that polite, dismissive nod managers offered when they wanted him to feel included. No. Carter saw him, really saw him. He felt it in his bones, a flicker of something he couldn't name. It wasn't judgment. It wasn't pity. It was measure. Like Carter wasn't asking if Jamal belonged here, but whether Jamal believed he did. The thought rattled him. As the dinner rush surged, Jamal focused harder, moving faster, working cleaner. Every movement precise. He doubled back to tables before anyone could call him, refilled glasses before they reached the halfway mark, and delivered every order with quiet confidence. When a customer snapped impatiently, Jamal diffused it with a calm apology and a free dessert voucher. When a child spilled soda across a white tablecloth, he handled it with a smile and fresh linens in under 2 minutes. And still, Carter watched. Near closing time, Jamal was rolling silverware at the back station when he heard footsteps behind him. He didn't turn around until he heard the voice. "Johnson." Jamal spun, heart slamming against his ribs. Carter stood there, hands in his pockets, head tilted slightly. "Yes, sir?" Jamal straightened up. Carter studied him for a moment, the kind of silence that felt louder than words.
"You've been here how long?" Jamal cleared his throat. "A little over 2 years, sir." Carter nodded slowly. "And you want to stay?" The question caught him off guard. I mean, yes, sir. I'm grateful for the job." Carter's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but like he was trying to read something deeper beneath the answer. "That's not what I asked. I asked if you want to stay, as in, is this where you see yourself?" Jamal's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Did he? Did he want to stay here forever? Serving tables, taking orders, swallowing insults? No, of course not. But what choice did he have? Jamal started, then stopped, then tried again. "I don't know. I'm just trying to make things work right now. Carter gave a small nod, like he expected that. That's honest. I like honest. He slipped his hands from his pockets, crossing his arms. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock. My office. Jamal blinked. Sir? Carter shrugged, a faint smile ghosting his lips. I like seeing who people are when they think no one's looking. With that, he turned and walked away, his steps quiet on the polished floor. Jamal stood frozen, heart thudding. What had just happened? Sherry passed by with a stack of menus. Damn, you're getting called up to the big leagues. Jamal shook his head, half dazed. I don't even know. But deep down, a flicker of something stirred. Hope. For the first time in years, something was changing. Gerald Foster didn't walk. He arrived. Even before he stepped into the Crescent, people on the staff knew when he was coming. It started with a call from the reservation line. Table 14, Foster. Special request, corner booth, extra privacy, no substitutions on the menu. Then came the whispered warnings through the service chat group. Foster's in tonight, y'all watch yourselves. He made Lexi cry last week. Whoever gets him stays sharp. Foster wasn't a celebrity. He wasn't a politician. But in the world of corporate consulting, his name rang bells. He was the man companies paid ridiculous sums to fix their business image. A smooth talker with a killer smile, a deep-pocket client who had no problem reminding you how far beneath him you were. And Jamal had been unlucky enough to catch his table more than once. The first time, Foster had leaned back in his chair, smiled that practiced, predatory grin and said, "Your posture's off. You're slouching. Look sharp. You're not a busboy, are you?" Jamal apologized. The second time, Foster waved his wine glass in Jamal's face and said, "Think you can afford this bottle, kid? I'll leave a good tip so you can dream about it." Jamal smiled, nodded, and wondered if pride was something only rich people could afford. But last night, the napkin incident? That was different. That wasn't playful ribbing. That wasn't smug entitlement. That was a man testing how much shame another human could swallow before snapping. And Jamal had swallowed it. He didn't even remember driving home that night. Didn't remember getting off the bus. But he remembered Foster's words, the sneer, the heat crawling up his neck as eyes turned toward him in pity or, worse, silent agreement. Did you even finish high school? Go back to wherever you came from. Jamal clenched his fists as he changed into his uniform in the break room the next morning. He wasn't a violent man, never had been, but for a wild, fleeting moment, he had imagined slamming that smug, smirking face into the marble tabletop. And then what? He'd lose his job, his paycheck, his lifeline. He'd have to explain to Kayla why rent was late, explain to his mother why the lights got cut off. That's how people like Foster win. They had nothing to lose. Guys like Jamal had everything on the line. He shook his head, brushing off the dark thoughts, and stepped onto the dining floor. But the universe wasn't done with him yet, because standing near the hostess stand, waiting with his wife on his arm, was Gerald Foster. Back again. Jamal froze mid-step. It was Saturday lunch hour. The crowd wasn't as intense as dinner, but Foster stood out anyway. Navy suit, Italian loafers, a Rolex that probably cost more than Jamal's yearly salary.
Foster laughed at something his wife whispered, flashing that rehearsed grin. Jamal's heart sank. He could ask Chef Marcus to swap tables. He could pull Malik aside and plead. But that wasn't him. That wasn't who his mama raised. You faced your storms, head on. He straightened his apron, took a breath, and walked toward them. Good afternoon, Mr. Foster. Mrs. Foster. Welcome back to the Crescent. If you'll follow me, I'll show you to your table. Foster turned, and for a split second his eyes locked onto Jamal's face. No flicker of recognition, no hint of apology, just nothing. As if Jamal was furniture, as if last night hadn't even registered. Jamal's jaw tightened. He led them to table 14. Foster settled in like a king returning to his throne. Jamal handed them menus. Can I start you with water, or perhaps... Foster waved a dismissive hand, sparkling, and don't take all day. Jamal nodded, stepping back. No reaction, no emotion, because that's what they expected. But something twisted in Jamal's chest. He felt it then, a hard truth wrapping around his ribs like a vice. People like Foster, they weren't rare. They were everywhere. Boardrooms, restaurants, street corners. People who measured worth by skin color, job title, bank account. And the worst part? They didn't even see what they did as wrong. It wasn't personal. It was just the world. Jamal moved through his shift like a man carrying glass in his gut. Every smile felt sharper. Every yes sir left a bitter taste. But he never dropped his professionalism, not once. And though Foster didn't notice, someone else did. Because halfway through the shift, as Jamal set a plate down at another table, he caught a glimpse of Mr. Carter, standing near the wine rack, arms folded, eyes sharp, watching. Jamal's pulse jumped. Had Carter seen Foster walk in? Had he watched the way Jamal swallowed the insults, smiled through the slights? Did he know what it cost to keep standing tall? The questions buzzed like static at the edge of Jamal's thoughts. By the time Foster signed the check, a deliberately small tip scrawled on the bill. Jamal felt drained. But when Foster stood to leave, his wife glanced back and gave Jamal a look. Not pity, not contempt. A look Jamal couldn't read. Was it regret? Guilt? Fear? He didn't know. And honestly, it didn't matter. Because as the door closed behind them, Jamal felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Resolve. He wasn't invisible. Not to Carter and not to himself. Foster didn't need to know who Jamal was. But soon enough, he would. The sun sank low behind the city skyline, casting long shadows across the Crescent's marble floors. Jamal moved like a machine, fluid, automatic, empty. Table 6 needed bread. Table 9 wanted lemon wedges. Table 14, Foster's table, asked for another bottle of sparkling water, with extra ice this time. Jamal delivered every request with the same steady voice and practiced smile. But inside, a slow, silent boil built beneath his ribs. It wasn't just Foster. It wasn't just the petty insults with the smug looks. It was the way life seemed rigged, the way people like Foster glided through the world untouched, while people like Jamal clawed for every inch. It was the way his mother winced every time she stood up, how Kayla tried to hide her worry, how every bill that arrived felt like a fresh punch to the gut. And tonight felt like a cruel joke. He hadn't even planned to take this shift, but Malik had called out sick, and Chef Marcus needed someone. Jamal said yes, because that's what Jamal always did. He said yes when they asked him to stay late, yes when customers snapped their fingers at him, yes when the universe kept handing him more than any one man should have to carry. But something inside him was changing. As he refilled Foster's glass, he noticed how the man didn't even look up, just held out his glass like a king waiting for a servant to pour his wine. He tipped the bottle slowly, watching the bubbles rise, thinking about all the times he'd been told to be grateful for what he had. Grateful? For what? For scraping by while Foster dropped money on overpriced drinks and treated people like garbage? For carrying a family on his back while customers like Foster couldn't carry basic decency? The thought hit him hard. He was tired, bone deep, soul-aching tired.
And not just of the shifts or the hours. Tired of swallowing his pride.
tired of pretending, tired of being invisible. "Careful there, Jackson," Foster said with a smirk, snapping Jamal out of his thoughts. "You overfill the glass, and someone might think you know what you're doing." Jamal froze. Jackson? His name tag, the one he wore every shift, read Jamal. The letters gleamed under the soft restaurant light. He looked at Foster. The man didn't blink, didn't smirk this time. He just stared, like Jamal was a chair or a potted plant. Jamal felt something sharp twist in his chest. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He nodded, set the bottle down gently, and walked away. But this time, the anger didn't leave him. Behind the service station, Jamal leaned against the wall, gripping the edge of the marble counter until his knuckles whitened. His breathing came shallow, fast. "You good, bro?" Malik asked quietly, sliding past with a tray of water glasses. Jamal gave a short nod. "Yeah, I'm good." He wasn't. Malik hesitated, watching him for a moment. "You sure? I mean, after last night and now this?" "I said I'm good." His voice came out sharper than intended. Malik backed off, lifting his hands. "Aight, man, just checking." Jamal forced a slow breath through his nose. He wasn't mad at Malik, wasn't even mad at Foster. He was mad at everything, at the world, at himself, at the way nothing ever seemed to change. For a split second, a voice whispered in his mind, dark and tempting. What if you didn't swallow it this time? What if you said something back? What if you didn't walk away? He shook his head, trying to push the thought away, but it was still there. By the time his shift neared the end, Jamal felt like he was moving through water. Each word, each smile, each polite nod felt heavier than the last. And then, as if the universe wanted to see how far it could push, Foster called him over. "Jackson." Jamal walked over slowly. "It's Jamal, sir." Foster blinked, tilting his head. "What's that?" "My name. It's Jamal." Foster smiled, a slow, condescending curve of his lips. "Ah, my mistake. You all look the same in those little aprons." The words hit like a slap. Silence fell around them. A couple at the next table turned their heads. Malik, passing by, stopped mid-step. Jamal's heart pounded in his ears. This was it, the boiling point. The moment he either swallowed every last ounce of pride or let it spill over. He stared at Foster, hands clenched at his sides. And then, a voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem here?" Jamal turned. Mr. Carter, standing, calm, expression unreadable, but his eyes burned with something sharp. Foster looked up, confusion flickering across his face. "I don't believe we've met." Carter stepped forward, voice even. "I'm Julian Carter. I own this restaurant." Foster's eyes widened, just slightly. Carter folded his arms. "And I don't tolerate disrespect under my roof." Jamal's breath caught. For the first time that night, the boiling stopped, and something else rose in its place. Pride. For a moment, the entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Julian Carter didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He stood beside Jamal, hands clasped loosely in front of him, his eyes fixed on Gerald Foster with a calm intensity that felt heavier than a shout.
I said, Carter repeated softly, I don't tolerate disrespect under my roof. Foster let out a dry, incredulous laugh. I'm sorry, he started, gesturing vaguely towards Jamal, but I believe I was speaking to my server. Is there a reason the owner of this establishment feels the need to interrupt a simple conversation? Carter tilted his head slightly. I don't see a conversation. Jamal stood frozen, heart pounding in his ears. All around them, heads turned, conversations dropped to whispers. Even Chef Marcus poked his head out from the kitchen door. Foster gave a slow, dismissive shake of his head. Look, I don't know what kind of show you're trying to put on here, Mr. Carter, but I'm a paying customer, and I don't appreciate being called out in front of a room full of strangers over whatever this is. Carter didn't blink. You're right, he said evenly. You are a paying customer. He took a half step forward, voice still low. But when you walked through that door, you didn't just buy food. You bought the experience of dining here, which includes being treated with respect and showing it in return. Foster's jaw twitched. I don't know who you think you are. I think I'm the man who built this business from nothing, Carter cut in smoothly. And I know I'm the man who decides who's welcome here and who's not.
The words dropped into the space between them like a stone in still water. Jamal swallowed hard, glancing at Carter's profile. The man's posture was relaxed, but his presence felt massive. Foster scoffed, glancing around as if expecting the room to back him up. Nobody spoke. Even his wife sat stiffly, hands folded in her lap, her gaze darting between her husband and Carter. This is ridiculous, Foster muttered, standing abruptly. I spend thousands here and you're going to side with a... He stopped himself, but the word hung in the air anyway. Carter's eyes narrowed slightly, a subtle tightening at the corners. His voice remained soft. You're right again, Mr. Foster. You do spend thousands here. And I'm choosing to side with a man who carries himself with more dignity on his worst day than you've shown on your best. A murmur rippled through the dining room. Foster's face flushed a deep red. This is outrageous. I'll be speaking to your investors. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. Carter smiled, calm, controlled. By all means, and until then, you won't be dining at the Crescent again. The finality in his voice cracked like a quiet thunderclap. Foster opened his mouth, then closed it. His eyes flicked to Jamal, no longer with contempt, but something colder. Fear. Without another word, Foster turned, snatched his coat from the chair, and stormed toward the exit, his wife hurrying after him. The door closed with a soft chime. For a beat, no one moved. Then a slow, scattered round of applause broke out near the bar. Jamal's eyes widened. It started with one table, then another. Polite, subtle, but real. Even Chef Marcus nodded from the kitchen door, folding his arms with a rare smirk. Jamal stood there, feeling like the floor had shifted beneath him. Carter turned toward him, finally meeting his eyes fully. You all right? He asked quietly. Jamal nodded, his throat tight. Yes, sir. Carter gave him a small, approving nod. Good. And just like that, Carter walked away, leaving Jamal standing in a quiet storm of whispered admiration. Later that night, when the rush had calmed and the last guests had filtered out, Jamal found himself wiping down the marble bar top, a task he didn't usually do. But he needed the moment. He needed to feel something solid under his hands. The door behind him opened softly. You handled yourself well tonight. Jamal turned. Mr. Carter.
He stepped behind the bar, loosening his cufflinks. Jamal swallowed. "Thank you, sir. I didn't know you were watching." Carter gave a short chuckle. "I'm always watching." Jamal nodded slowly, unsure of what to say next. Carter leaned on the bar, meeting his eyes. "You know why I stepped in, right?" Jamal hesitated. "Because of what he said?" Carter shook his head. "Because of what you didn't say." Jamal frowned, confused. "You didn't crack. You didn't lose your cool. You didn't stoop to his level." He paused, his voice lowering. "That's strength, Jamal. The kind people either break under or build on." Jamal felt something shift in his chest, like a knot loosening after being pulled too tight for too long. Carter straightened. "You ever think about doing more than this?" Jamal blinked. "More? More than waiting tables. More than swallowing other people's garbage." Jamal opened his mouth and closed it. Did he? Could he? Carter gave a knowing smile. "I see you, even when you think no one else does." He reached into his blazer pocket, pulling out a business card. "Tomorrow, my office, 10 sharp." Jamal took the card with trembling fingers. He glanced down. Julian Carter, founder and CEO. When he looked up, Carter was already walking away. But his words lingered, low and firm. "Let's talk about your future." Jamal stood outside the office door, heart hammering in his chest. The plaque read, "Julian Carter, founder and CEO." 10 sharp. That's what Carter had said, and Jamal wasn't a second late. He smoothed the front of his plain button-down shirt, the best one he owned, wiped his clammy hands on his slacks, and knocked softly. A low, calm voice answered from inside. "Come in." Jamal pushed the door open. The office wasn't what he expected. No sprawling mahogany desk, no leather-bound books screaming wealth and power. It was simple, clean, warm. A dark wooden desk sat by the window, a few framed photos on the wall. Carter with employees, Carter shaking hands with community leaders, Carter at a food bank event. And there, behind the desk, sat the man himself. Julian Carter looked up from a folder, setting it aside. "Jamal," he greeted with a nod. "Have a seat." Jamal crossed the room and eased into the chair opposite him, sitting straight, every nerve on high alert. Carter studied him for a long moment before speaking. "You've been working for me for over 2 years now. I've seen your work ethic, your patience, your consistency." Jamal gave a small nod. "Thank you, sir." Carter leaned forward slightly, his voice low but firm. "And I've seen you take things no man should have to take, from people who wouldn't last a day in your shoes." Jamal's mouth went dry. Carter sat back. "I don't like bullies, Jamal. Never have." He folded his hands together on the desk. "I built this business because I wanted to create a space where people were treated with dignity, staff and guests alike. But the higher you rise, the more you realize money doesn't buy character." Jamal swallowed hard, unsure if this was a reprimand or a compliment. Carter seemed to read his hesitation. "I didn't call you in here to lecture you," he said quietly. "I called you in here because I want to know something." Jamal met his eyes. "What's that, sir?" Carter's gaze sharpened.
"What are you doing here?" Jamal blinked. I work here." Carter gave a slight smile. "That's not what I mean." He leaned forward, his voice lowering. "I see men like you every day, heads down, taking orders, swallowing pride. But you're different. You've got something most people don't. Jamal frowned slightly. What do you mean? Carter tapped the finger on the desk. Most people either break or they become bitter. You haven't done either. Jamal stared at him, uncertain what to say. Carter continued. I've watched you, not just last night, before that. The way you treat people, the way you handle pressure, the way you carry yourself when no one's watching. He held Jamal's gaze. That's leadership, Jamal. And you've been leading without even knowing it. Jamal's breath caught in his throat. Leadership? Him? Carter gave a slow nod. So I'll ask you again. What are you doing here? Jamal opened his mouth, but the words tangled on his tongue. He thought about his mother, sitting in that old armchair, tired but smiling. He thought about Kayla, flipping through her college textbooks, determined to make them both proud. He thought about every shift, every insult, every silent battle he'd fought and swallowed. I'm trying to survive, Jamal said quietly. Carter nodded, as if expecting the answer. And how's that working for you? Jamal let out a soft, breathless laugh. Barely. Carter's expression softened. It's time you stopped surviving and started living. He opened the folder on his desk, sliding a thin sheet of paper toward Jamal. Jamal leaned forward, scanning the header. The Crescent Leadership Development Program, Management Trainee Offer. He froze. I don't understand. Carter folded his arms. It's simple. We're starting a new leadership program next quarter. I've got 3 spots open. You're my first pick. Jamal stared at the paper, his heart racing. This isn't charity, Carter added firmly. I don't believe in handouts. This is because you've earned it. Jamal shook his head slightly. But I don't have a degree. I've never managed anyone before. Carter held up his hand. Neither did I when I started. Jamal met his eyes, searching for any trace of a joke. But Carter wasn't smiling. You've got more potential than half the people walking around with business degrees. What you don't know, we'll teach you. What you've already got, no school can give you. Jamal felt a strange tightness in his chest, part hope, part fear. Why me? He asked softly. Carter leaned back in his chair. Because when Foster humiliated you, you didn't fold. You didn't lash out. You stood tall. And sometimes, Jamal, that's the kind of man you build a company on. The room fell silent. Jamal stared down at the paper, his hands trembling slightly. Carter's voice dropped lower. I'm giving you a shot, the kind nobody gave me when I started. Don't waste it. Jamal swallowed hard, his voice barely a whisper.
I won't. Carter smiled, the first real, genuine smile Jamal had seen from him. I know. As Jamal walked out of that office, the weight on his shoulders didn't vanish, but for the first time in years, it felt lighter, because maybe, just maybe, his story was about to change. The email hit Carter's inbox at 7:03 a.m. sharp. Subject line, regarding incident at the Crescent, immediate attention required. The sender, Gerald Foster, Foster Consulting Group. The email was as cold as it was predictable. Mr. Carter, it is with deep disappointment that I write regarding the unprofessional conduct of your staff and your personal handling of our interaction on Saturday evening. As a long-standing client of the Crescent, I expect to be treated with the utmost respect, not subjected to public humiliation due to the incompetence of your waitstaff and your apparent need for self-righteous grandstanding. I have already discussed this matter with several of my partners, including influential investors and members of the city's hospitality board. Should this issue not be resolved swiftly, namely with the termination of the server in question, I will have no choice but to take my business and my influence elsewhere. Awaiting your response. Gerald Foster. Carter read it twice, unmoved. He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin. Foster had played his hand. The veiled threats, the whispered influence, the predictable corporate bullying. Carter had seen this game before. Men like Foster thrived on intimidation, on making people believe the sky would fall if they didn't get their way.
But what Foster didn't realize was that Julian Carter had built his empire on defying that fear, and he wasn't about to stop now. Jamal didn't know about the email until later that afternoon. He was folding napkins at the side station when Sherry slid up beside him, her face tight. "You hear?" she whispered. Jamal glanced over. "Hear what?" She lowered her voice further. "Foster's making noise. Said you embarrassed him. He's calling in favors." Jamal froze mid-fold. "Favors?" Sherry nodded. "Word is, he's trying to pressure Carter, once you gone." Jamal stared at the crisp white linen in his hands, a cold weight settling in his gut. Gone. Just like that. Was this how it ended? One confrontation, one stand, and now he was on the chopping block? He forced a shaky breath through his nose. Of course. Why wouldn't it be? The world didn't change overnight. Bullies didn't back down quietly. He folded the napkin with steady hands, even though they shook inside. "I guess I'll find out soon enough," he murmured. Sherry touched Jamal's arm gently. "I'm sorry, Jamal."
He gave her a tight smile. "Yeah, me too." By the time his shift ended, the rumors had spread like wildfire. "He's pulling strings. I heard Carter's meeting with the investors. They might have to let Jamal go just to save face." Jamal walked through the staff corridor like a ghost among whispers. Nobody said it to his face. Nobody had to. He felt it in the way they looked at him, pity mixed with quiet fear, as if standing up for himself had painted a target on his back, and they were just glad it wasn't theirs. At the end of the hallway, near the manager's office, Carter stood waiting. Jamal's heart slammed against his ribs. This was it. The end. He swallowed hard and walked toward him. Carter's face was unreadable. "Step into my office, Jamal." Jamal nodded, following him inside. The door clicked shut behind them. Carter sat behind his desk, gesturing to the chair across from him. Jamal sat slowly, his pulse loud in his ears. For a moment, Carter said nothing, just studied him with those sharp, observant eyes. Then, "So, Foster's making noise?" "Yeah, I figured." Carter leaned back in his chair. "You know what he wants?" Jamal nodded, my head on a platter. Carter gave a slight smirk. "That's about right." Jamal sat up straighter, forcing his voice to stay even. "If this is the part where you tell me I'm fired, I get it. I won't make a scene. You have to protect your business." Carter arched an eyebrow. "Is that what you think I called you in here for?" "I mean, yeah." Carter shook his head slowly. "I didn't build this business to bow to men like Foster." Jamal stared at him, unsure if he heard right. You're not firing me?" Carter gave a short chuckle. "Jamal, I'm promoting you." Jamal's mouth dropped open. "What?" Carter folded his arms, his expression firm. "I already sent my response to Foster. I told him I don't do business with bullies. And if that costs me some influential investors, so be it." Jamal felt his throat tighten. "But why? Why risk it?" Carter leaned forward. "Because I don't build my success on fear. I build it on loyalty, on integrity, on people who stand for something." He held Jamal's gaze. "And that's you." Jamal stared at him, a storm of emotions crashing through him. Disbelief, gratitude, hope. "But this could cost you." "It won't," Carter said simply. "Because people respect a man who stands his ground. And if they don't, they're not the people I want in my corner." He reached into his desk, sliding a thin envelope across to Jamal. "Welcome to the management trainee program. Officially." Jamal took it with trembling hands.
For a moment, he couldn't speak. When he finally did, his voice came out hoarse. "Thank you." Carter gave him a rare, genuine smile. "No, thank you." As Jamal walked out of the office, the whispers followed him. But this time, they sounded different. Not pity, not fear. Something closer to respect. And for the first time, he walked with his head high.
The night air felt heavier than usual as Jamal made his way home. Streetlights flickered, casting long shadows on the cracked sidewalks. He clutched the envelope Carter had given him like it was something fragile, something he didn't quite believe was real. The management offer, the promotion, the stand Carter had taken, the stand he had taken. It didn't feel like victory. Not yet. It felt like the start of something he wasn't sure he deserved. When he pushed open the door to the tiny two-bedroom apartment he shared with his mother and Kayla, the familiar scent of fried plantains and lavender air freshener wrapped around him. His mother sat in her favorite chair, the one with the worn arms and the crocheted blanket. Kayla sat cross-legged on the couch, a textbook open in her lap, pen tapping against her knee. Both women looked up the moment he walked in. "Hey, Ma," Jamal greeted softly, setting down his keys. "Hey, baby," his mother replied, her voice light but lined with the weariness she never complained about. "You're late," Kayla chimed in, standing and stretching. "I thought you'd be home hours ago. Did something happen at work?" Jamal hesitated. They both noticed. His mother leaned forward. "Jamal." He took a deep breath, moving toward them. You mind if I sit?" His mother patted the couch beside her. "Come here, child." He sat down slowly, fingers brushing the envelope still clutched in his hand. "There's something I need to tell you both." Kayla arched an eyebrow, half teasing. "You didn't get fired, did you?" Jamal gave a soft laugh, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Almost." Kayla's smile dropped. His mother's hand shot out, resting gently on his knee. "Jamal, what happened?" And just like that, it all came pouring out. The customer, Gerald Foster, the insults, the humiliation, the boiling anger he'd buried for too long. He told him about the night Foster pushed him too far, how Carter stepped in, how Foster tried to get him fired, and how Carter refused. And finally, how Carter offered him a spot in the leadership program. By the time he finished, silence hung in the room, thick, heavy, alive. His mother stared at him, eyes wide with something deep and unreadable. Kayla sat still, her hand covering her mouth. Jamal shifted on the couch. I thought I'd lose everything." His mother let out a slow, trembling breath. "Oh, my baby." She leaned forward, wrapping her arms around him in a tight, fierce hug. "You stood your ground," she whispered into her shoulder. "You stood your ground." Jamal felt the sting behind his eyes before he could stop it. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. I didn't want to make things worse. I didn't want to be invisible anymore." His mother pulled back slightly, cupping his face in her hands. "Jamal, you have never been invisible. Not to me, not to your sister, and now, not to the world." Kayla moved closer, her voice soft but sure. "You did what most people wouldn't have the guts to do." Jamal shook his head. "I was scared." Kayla smiled gently. "That's what makes it brave." He looked between the two of them, his heart full in a way it hadn't been in a long time. I just want to make you proud," he said softly. His mother leaned back, her eyes shimmering. "You already have." Later that night,
After Kayla had gone to bed, Jamal found himself sitting on the balcony with his mother. The city lights flickered in the distance, soft hums of life floating up from the street below. She sipped her tea in silence for a moment before speaking. "You know, your father would have been proud too." Jamal turned toward her. His father had passed when he was barely 8, but the memory of him, strong, kind, quiet, lived in the stories his mother kept alive. He always said, she continued, her voice soft, that a real man isn't the loudest in the room, but the one who knows when to stand. Jamal nodded slowly. "I guess I'm learning." His mother gave him a knowing smile. "You're not just learning, Jamal. You're becoming." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the city's quiet hum a steady backdrop to a moment he knew he'd carry forever. When he finally stood to head inside, his mother touched his hand gently. "Promise me one thing." He looked down at her. "Don't let this world change your heart. Let it sharpen your strength, but never your kindness." Jamal squeezed her hand. "I promise." As he closed the door to his room that night, Jamal realized something had shifted inside him. Not just pride, not just relief, but a quiet understanding. The battle wasn't over. There would always be people like Foster, always be challenges. But for the first time, he knew who he was. And that made all the difference. Monday morning hit with the kind of crispness that sharpened everything. The light, the air, the edge in Jamal's gut. He walked into the Crescent wearing the same uniform he'd worn for 2 years, but everything felt different. People nodded at him now. Not out of routine, but out of something close to respect. Malik even clapped him on the shoulder as he passed. "Boss man," Malik grinned. "You ready for this?" Jamal gave a small smile. "As ready as I'll ever be." But deep inside, a tiny seed of doubt whispered, "What if you're not?" He pushed that aside. Today wasn't about fear. It was about stepping up. The leadership training orientation wasn't some fancy affair. Just a small group gathered in the upstairs conference room. 3 trainees, 2 supervisors, and Carter himself. Jamal sat through the introductions, the course outline, the expectations. He took notes, listened closely, asked questions when they came. It wasn't until the session ended that something unexpected happened. As people filtered out, Carter called him aside. "Jamal, hang back for a minute." Jamal nodded, his pulse picking up. Carter waited until the room cleared before leaning against the edge of the table. "You're going to start shadowing me 2 weeks, hands-on. Meetings, operations, vendor calls. You'll see everything, the good and the bad." Jamal blinked. "You want me to shadow you?" Carter gave a small, almost amused smile. "I don't put people in leadership roles who haven't seen the view from the top and the bottom. You've earned the bottom view. Now it's time you see the rest." Jamal nodded slowly, a swirl of nerves and gratitude tightening in his chest. "Thank you, sir." Carter gave him a nod. "Be in my office tomorrow at 9. Jamal turned to leave, but Carter called out again. "Oh, and Jamal." He glanced back. "You've already proven you can handle people like Foster. Let's see how you handle opportunity." Later that afternoon, as Jamal organized invoices behind the front desk, the door chimed. He glanced up out of habit and froze. Gerald Foster, walking in, head high, tailored suit sharp as ever. Jamal's first instinct was to brace for impact, a confrontation, a scene. But what happened next made his stomach twist in a way he didn't expect. Foster didn't head toward the dining room, didn't storm up to Carter's office. He walked straight to him. Jamal squared his shoulders, forcing his expression to stay neutral. "Good afternoon," he greeted quietly. Foster gave a slight nod. "Afternoon."
For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then, "I want a word," Foster said flatly.
Jamal didn't move. I'm on the clock. Foster gave a clipped, humorless smile. Won't take long. Jamal hesitated, then nodded. He stepped around the counter, leading Foster toward a small private alcove near the coat check. What do you want? Jamal asked calmly. Foster slipped his hands into his pockets. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to offer something. Jamal blinked. Offer? Foster's jaw tightened slightly. I spoke to Carter. Told him I overreacted, that I misjudged the situation. Jamal crossed his arms. Why do I not believe that's the whole story? Foster's eyes flicked away for a second before settling back. I've been in this town a long time, Jamal. Long enough to know when I'm on the wrong side of a power move. Carter's respected. People talk. Investors listen. And, apparently, so do his staff. Jamal stayed silent. Foster gave a slow exhale. Look, I came here to say, I may have underestimated you. Jamal's brow furrowed. Is that your version of an apology? Foster gave a dry chuckle. It's as close as you'll get. Jamal shook his head, letting out a soft laugh. You really think that means anything to me? Foster's expression shifted. Not smug this time, but something else. Cautious. I'm serious. You've got something I didn't expect. Grit. Poise. You handled that situation better than most men I know, and I know men who run Fortune 500s. Jamal's arms dropped slightly. So, you came here to, what? Compliment me? Foster met his gaze evenly. I came here to offer you a job. The words hit like a punch to the gut. Jamal stared at him. You're joking. Foster shook his head. No. I've got a management training program of my own. Pays double what you're making here. You've got the temperament, the drive. I could use a man like you. Jamal let out a low whistle, shaking his head slowly. So, let me get this straight. You try to humiliate me, nearly get me fired, and now you want me to work for you? Foster gave a slow nod. That's business. Jamal's eyes hardened. No, that's you. Foster's face tightened. Think carefully before you throw away an opportunity, Jamal. You won't get many offers like this. Jamal took a small step closer, lowering his voice. No, I think you're the one who should think carefully, because I'm already standing in the middle of an opportunity with people who see me as a man, not a move on a chessboard. Foster held his stare for a long, tense moment. Then, a thin, almost respectful smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Your call. He turned and walked out. No threats, no fanfare. Just the quiet retreat of a man who wasn't used to hearing no.
As Jamal watched him go, something stirred deep inside, something stronger than pride. It was freedom. The freedom of knowing he could say no and still stand tall. The next morning, Jamal walked into the Crescent and noticed it before he even reached the staff locker room. The shift. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was there. The hostess, Jenna, who'd always greeted him with a polite, distracted nod, actually smiled when he passed. Morning, Jamal, she said, her tone warm. He blinked. Morning. In the kitchen, Malik tossed him a clean apron before he even asked. You shadowing Carter again today? Malik asked, a hint of curiosity in his voice. Yeah, Jamal replied carefully. Couple times a week now. Malik gave a low whistle. Man, that's big. Jamal shrugged with a small grin. Trying to keep up? Malik smirked, shaking his head. Keep up? Looks to me like you're setting the pace. Jamal laughed softly, slipping the apron over his head. But inside, they noticed. Not just Carter, not just his family, his co-workers. The same people who used to see him as just a waiter now seemed to look at him like something more. By the afternoon, the difference became impossible to ignore. Andre, one of the senior floor managers, approached him during a lull in service. You got a second, Jamal? Jamal set down his tray. Sure. Andrew gestured toward the side corridor near the kitchen. When they were out of earshot, Andrew leaned in slightly. I heard about Foster. Jamal tensed slightly. Yeah? Andrew gave a short nod. Carter told us what really went down. Said you kept your cool, handled yourself like a pro. Jamal shifted. I just did what I had to do. Andrew's gaze sharpened. Exactly. And that's why I'm telling you this. There's a spot opening up for assistant floor manager next quarter. I think you should apply. Jamal blinked. What? Andrew gave a half grin. Yeah, you. You got the temperament, the respect to the staff, and after seeing how you handled Foster, I'd be lying if I said I didn't think you got leadership in you. Jamal stared at him, heart pounding. You're serious? Andrew nodded, dead serious. For a second, Jamal couldn't speak. I appreciate that, he said quietly. Andre clapped him on the shoulder. Think about it. I'll even put in a word. With that, he turned and walked off, leaving Jamal standing there, stunned. By the end of the day, it wasn't just Andrew. Marcus, the head chef, gave him a rare nod of approval as he passed the kitchen window. Good work, kid, Marcus muttered, not even breaking stride. Even Sherry, who'd always been friendly, started treating him like a peer instead of just another server. At closing, as they wiped down tables together, she leaned over and nudged him gently. Feels different now, huh? Jamal chuckled. What does? Sherry smiled knowingly. When people stop looking at you like you're furniture and start looking at you like you're part of the foundation. Jamal met her gaze, something warm stirring in his chest. Yeah, he said softly. It does. That night, as he headed toward Carter's office for their scheduled check-in, Jamal couldn't shake the feeling. This wasn't just about a promotion, or a title, or even a paycheck. It was about stepping into a space he'd always been afraid wasn't meant for him, and realizing it was. He knocked on Carter's door, waiting for the familiar, "Come in." When he stepped inside, Carter was at his desk, scrolling through a report on his tablet. He looked up, gave a nod. Jamal? How was the floor today?
Jamal sat in the chair opposite him. Good. Busy, but good. Carter set down the tablet, leaning back slightly. Anything you want to talk about? Jamal hesitated, then smiled faintly. Yeah, actually. Carter arched an eyebrow, waiting. Jamal took a breath. I noticed people see me differently now, since, everything that happened with Foster. Carter gave a small, knowing smile. They see the man who stood up. Jamal nodded. I guess I didn't realize how much people notice. Carter leaned forward, his voice low but steady. People always notice, Jamal. They just don't always say it out loud. Jamal met his eyes. I want to be worthy of this. The leadership program, the respect. I don't want it to be a fluke. Carter studied him for a long moment. You know what makes a good leader? He asked finally. Jamal shook his head slowly. Carter smiled faintly. It's not perfection. It's not knowing all the answers. It's not power. He leaned forward slightly. It's knowing who you are and refusing to compromise that. Jamal let the words sink in. Carter gave a small nod. You've already proven that, Jamal. The rest, that comes with time. Jamal sat back, a quiet peace settling over him. Maybe, just maybe, he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The Crescent's annual investors' dinner was the biggest event of the year. Every major name in the city, business leaders, community heads, philanthropists, all gathered under one roof for an evening of fine dining, networking, and power plays. Jamal had worked this event twice before, as a waiter, on the edges of the room, invisible. Tonight, he wasn't wearing an apron. He wasn't carrying a tray. He was standing beside Julie and Carter, in a tailored suit Carter had personally ordered for him as part of the official hosting committee. "Ready for your first big night as management?" Carter asked quietly as they stood by the grand entrance. Jamal adjusted his tie, giving a nervous smile. "Ready as I'll ever be." Carter gave him a firm pat on the back. "You've earned this. Own it."
The night unfolded in a swirl of lights, music, and soft murmurs of expensive conversation. Jamal greeted guests, introduced himself to investors, exchanged firm handshakes. And with each introduction, something began to shift inside him, a quiet confidence he didn't have to fake. They didn't see a waiter. They didn't see a kid from the South Side. They saw Jamal Matthews, management trainee at the Crescent. He wasn't invisible anymore. Halfway through the evening, as Jamal excused himself from a conversation with a local business owner, he spotted a familiar figure near the bar. Gerald Foster. Dressed to perfection, drink in hand, holding court with a small circle of men in expensive suits. Jamal's gut tensed automatically, an old reflex. But this time, he didn't look away. This time, he walked toward him. Foster noticed him when he was just a few steps away. For a split second, something flickered in the older man's eyes. Surprise? Amusement? Annoyance? Jamal offered a polite smile. "Good evening, Mr. Foster." Foster gave a slow nod, sipping his drink. "Matthews?" The men around them glanced between the two, sensing something. Jamal met Foster's gaze evenly. "I see you're enjoying the evening." Foster gave a casual shrug. "It's the Crescent, hard not to." Jamal nodded, his voice calm. "Glad to hear it. As part of the leadership team now, I take that as a compliment." Foster's expression didn't flicker, but the shift in the air was undeniable. One of the men beside Foster raised his brows slightly. "Leadership?" Jamal turned to him with an easy smile. "Yes, I was recently promoted, management trainee under Mr. Carter himself." The man gave an approving nod. "Impressive. You moving up fast." Jamal shrugged modestly. "Trying to earn my place." He turned back to Foster, his voice dropping just enough for only them to hear, but not by stepping on people. Foster's jaw tightened ever so slightly. For a heartbeat, they just stared at each other. Then, Foster gave a slow, forced smile. "Well, congratulations." Jamal nodded. "Thank you." He extended his hand. He hesitated. Then, slowly, he took it. A firm, respectful shake, the kind given between equals. Jamal held his gaze, and in that handshake, he felt it, the shift, the unspoken acknowledgement. I didn't break you, and I can't control you. When they released hands, Jamal gave a slight nod. "Enjoy the evening, Mr. Foster." He turned and walked away, head high, shoulders back, heart steady. He didn't need revenge. He didn't need payback. This was better. As he made his way back toward Carter, Kayla stepped into his path. She looked stunning, dressed in a sleek black gown Carter had gifted her as a guest of honor. "You handled that like a king," she said softly, eyes shining. Jamal gave a small, quiet laugh, more like a man who finally knows who he is. Kayla hugged him tight. "I'm proud of you." Jamal hugged him back, the weight of years of struggle lifting in a way he never expected. "Thanks, little sis." The night ended with a speech from Carter himself, thanking the investors,
the staff, and those who embody the heart of the Crescent. Jamal stood near the stage, watching as Carter's eyes met his during the final words. And to those who remind us that dignity, integrity, and quiet strength are the real keys to leadership, thank you. Applause echoed through the grand hall, and for the first time, Jamal applauded himself too. As the last guests filtered out and the music faded, Carter approached him with a rare grin. "How'd it feel?" he asked. Jamal exhaled slowly, a genuine smile pulling at his lips. "Like the beginning." Carter nodded. "Good, because it is." Jamal walked out of the Crescent that night beneath a sky stretched wide with stars. No applause, no fanfare, just a man, finally walking in the fullness of who he was always meant to be. And that was everything.